도 담배 취해서 그지 바나 레바세다 데셈바 슈 강셈바 제베 담배 취해디 다 전주 남비치면 나온지劳动치면 나옵니다. 가자 잡채와 까야기 디가돌라다 가리레스나 우마베다 렌치다답주 스니다 가지 슈에기를 하대죠. 어디니마 못니마도 슈인스.
So please generate the motivation to listen to this teaching, making your mind very clear that you will do whatever it takes in order to achieve the most precious and the highest state of perfect and complete Buddhahood, in order to benefit all mother sentient beings who are infinite and vast. Infinite is limitless space. And the teaching that we will be listening to is within the Lamrim, Chenmo, the great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment, and in the section of the Great Insight, which is in the 3rd volume. And the heading of this section that we're in is the fault of the overly broad identification of the object to be negated. And under that section, it's the subsection of how the Madhyamaka refutes that position.
다 도체 도나 랑심메바 동니니 동니 탐바마이 노셰 마싱 대고는 시진방비 추봉기 연조 돌아스 랑심메발라 묘나 항스 랑심메나 지시유 냠네 최담제 대여바 마이바 되나 항스 최대 양도 동아주로 서다 독전이다 다마 다둠 자연데 다 랑심메비 동니 다랑심이 돈이 담바 많이 놓은 시 마신 고나스다 평화라 발라와 가자 잡채와 되겐들라와 오다 랑심이 돈이디 아니 돈이 담바 많이 놓은 시 마신 대고나 시지방비 최면과 초봉경 연조 돌아스다 가스나 다 동반이 샤인데와 랑신기 주밤 랑은 주바 뒤에서만 마주비 돈이 샤오로와 오다 랑신기 마주비 동반이 들라 때네 텐데베드니 디 랑신 주바 까베 균세나 때네 최담제드니 때네 요바 말에 섬에다 로도지 던데지기다 땡네 다 최담제 우미리베 가자레 선데케지디 셰와로바 다 디치도 된다 디카둘라 낭된니기 돈네드니 로아지름지 가스나 다 타니로와 타니요바 따다당 체다니요바 따다당 체다니기 아니 뇌렉바 심비 땡네 티 고수기 다 따와디마 빵에 답시 맞춰와 있나 랑심에 바 돈이디 또 투고 말해 신다 딘값수 셰조디 디레 다 타니기 나네 타당보로와 랑신기 마주바 랑신기 주바디 다 딱베 타샤네 랑신기 마주비 돈이 담바 마이노 셰 마신 대고나 승인 직체 오다 딘저와 디게 최봉로와 시진방비 최봉기 연조조라스 다 가르스나 랑심 마주비 돈이 담바 마이노 스니르와 다 최담지 랑신기 마주비 돈이는 돈이 초도 주와들와 다 최담지 랑심 마주비 돈이 담바 마이노 스니르와 디 라겐데다 다 나베나 가리레 우마랑 주바당 우마 다 심잠 받은 저기 다 되바 땅도 제와이나 랑심 마주비 돈이 담바 마이노 세기다 조마겐데 디가니 샤오는 거와 어디고나 아니 시진방비 초봉경 연조조 쓰리다 아니 가스나 다 시진방 봤으나 다 시진기 도디르 무지기 나온데 아니 동반이기 따와디 방반상 아니 최봉기 레치 친구 싸네 아니 연송 연조라 조야게 되니 벨랭에 사비고네 아니 통화주 그래 스타도르스드나 따다라 홍수나 아니 연조 동의 교인직 체달라 루나 연조 동의 교인직 오다 딜라윤데다 니와디기 랑신 메발라 묘나양 랑신 메나 지시유 냠니 최담지 때네 여바 많이 봐 되나 최대 양도 동아 유로 쓰려다 오다 디 평화를 비디 쓰고와 랑신 메발라 메바 요래고 최담지 랑신 마주비 돈이디라 메바 샤고르데 이나양 랑신 메나 최담지 양 여바 요 말에 최담지 여바 많이 세기 딘데기로와 여바 많이 세기 되나요? 아니 체달을 홍가 주와레 체달을 홍네 다 간다만다 아니 년송아 동을 내서와다 도르수드나 따다라 루나야 예송라 통에게 랭에 싸봐 체달라 루나야 예송라 통에 랭에 싸봐 다 따다디디 바카스 랍셈바 최담제 랑싱기 마주비 레 로조 랑싱기 주바 켈레나 따다라 루네 아니 시징기 도데르 무제로 와스타 콜로파바 시징기 도데르 무지기는 공바디당 티니 뮤튜바 디기 낭된 공바디 치지로도 마와 최 많이 마와 인상 최봉기 레산네 연조 동네직 랑신 메바 켈랭게 요나야 랑신 메나 아니 최담제야 메바 레 섬여티니 최담제 메바 되바이나요 아니 체달라 후니 아니 년송라 동와 다 도르수드나 당제기 타니라 따와디 마와이나 아니 다 가스나 지라니 풍와 주와레 스타지름지 딘잔다 공도 흉망부지 장어와 어디 쿵당네 다 도르수드나 아니 딱다 랑신 주바당 체다 때니 메바 니기 따와라 내주요 말 딘내와이나 랑 딘마와 칭에 강사라니 풍와 주와레 쓴다 낭된 디간 뜻이 자로도
In brief, so this is page 148, third paragraph. In brief, if you claim that the emptiness, which is the absence of intrinsic existence, is not the sublime emptiness taught by the Buddha and you refute it, then you will be reborn in a miserable realm due to having abandoned the true teaching, the perfection of wisdom. If you take an interest in the absence of intrinsic existence, but think if there is no intrinsic existence, what is there? And then claim that all phenomena do not exist at all, you will still fall into the chasm of the view of annihilation. So then there's this position that we're currently discussing of these earlier generations of Tibetan scholars, where they assert an overly broad object of negation as the object negated by the Madhyamaka view, and talking about emptiness. And so, when they go, so then when you posit emptiness in the Madhyamaka text, how it is posited in the Madhyamaka texts is as the emptiness of the phenomena not having even a mere atom of nature. So that's how it's posited. So then these earlier generations of Tibetan scholars, hearing that way of positing emptiness, then have the thought, so then all phenomena don't exist, do not exist at all, right? They think if there is no intrinsic existence, what is there? And then claim that all phenomena do not exist at all. So that's one extreme view. So there are two extremes, right? The extreme of permanence and the extreme of annihilation. And those are, and this results from not identifying accurately or correctly the object being negated. So you have one way of having an extreme view. So in this very single paragraph, there's two extreme views presented, both the view of permanence and of annihilation. So for someone who doesn't accept, the emptiness, which is the non-existence of a nature, a phenomenon, someone doesn't accept that phenomena are not established by way of a nature, then for them, they're simply denying or rejecting the teaching of the perfection of wisdom, the sutras of perfection of wisdom. So since they're rejecting those perfection of wisdom sutras, then that's an act of abandoning the true teaching, or what's called abandoning the Dharma. And so that's how it's falling into an extreme. And for them, we would say, if people don't accept this absence of the lack of the nature and phenomena, if they don't accept that's the meaning of emptiness, and they don't accept that, then that's would be the position of the Svatantrika Madhyamakas and also the Chittamatras. So for them, that's actually an extreme of permanence for them because they're, holding. They're not accepting emptiness to be the, they have a. They're not accepting emptiness to be the lack of the nature of Dharma. So that's why they're, going to fall into the lower realms because first they abandon the Dharma by rejecting the teaching of the perfection of wisdom, and then through that, then they'll end up accumulating non-virtue and negative karma, and by accumulating negative karma, then that will result in birth falling into lower realms. So then that's one way of falling into that's how people misunderstanding emptiness fall into the extreme of permanence. That's one fault. The next fault is falling into the extreme of annihilation. So that's the earlier Tibetan scholars who misinterpret the Madhyamaka by saying all phenomena do not exist at all. So that's their way of understanding emptiness. So they have the fault of saying that phenomena do not exist at all. So either way, these two faulty views, wrong views, are a big fault where the practitioner, makes an error and sort of falls into an extreme, and they become acts of abandoning the Dharma by rejecting what's taught in the perfection of wisdom. So when you don't accept that that phenomena are not established within nature, then you're just rejecting the perfection of wisdom sutra and its meaning, and so that's going to have you, I'm not finding the exact word in this paragraph, but something. It's a great, it's a big fault, a big error, big mistake. That abandons Dharma. And then so like this was said last week in the previous class, then the way of abandoning Dharma for those who assert that again because tama di karisuni na going on up the chitamje Rangshingi Jumna, these are the Rangshingi Jumna, and Chetala
Rangshingi Chet Dilarwa, Chetum Jetner, Rangshi Mebala Muba Yubitin, Rangshi Majuba said the Rangshi Maju said the Chetam Yuba Maimbajan Shagwarwa, Chetam Umeji Kajaris, in T Tone, Chedala Humekonetini, Yasona Tungris.
I thought he was connecting. I thought there was a statement about the last week's class, but no. So just so the people who say that object of negation is just all phenomena, then they negate all phenomena, and that is the extreme of annihilation, which leads to falling into the lower realms, and so this is the. This paragraph here is sort of saying like in brief, so it's sort of starting the conclusion of this section, summarizing
it. Tedarayans, Tonganila Tanyana Sherab Chunam Pomajur, Shebi Deva Sisa Les, Rishi Kade Tamje Tongba de Tamje Yoba Maino She Tona, Tise Ti Lokpa Tawa Jurde, so that the Kungdangwa, Taki Kondra Sonsua. O Chetamje Rangshin Majuba di Junzen to Rangshin Majuba, Jumden de Sumare, Rangshin Majuba, T Junzen to Chen Rangshin Majubi Tonila Meba Yugen, Umaba Yin Lap, Ta Rangshin Majuba ina, Yoba Maimba di Kala Koaina, Oda Tigita, Kalar Chedala Lune, Ani Bechi, Lenge Sagre, Segita Kundila, Ani Tedarayang, Tongbanila, Tanina, Sheram Chuna Puma Jurus, Takumulu, Zawashiran Narwa. Tongba ni larwa, tongba ni se rangshin ke majubi tongni tila 아니 따당디 되는 따다지 마대와 체단데 뭐 맞중아이나 아니 랑신기 마주 수도 최담지 여바 많이 세지라 고니 아니 네바티 동네 아니 딘다와지 켈림이 되네 아니 시랍 충나 봉아 줄 수도 왔다 랑신 마주바디 지다와신도 하마쿠비 왕기 아니 최담지 여바 많이 바 켈림이 되네 아니 심지 시랍 매경이다 강사 다 ombutu부도 왔다 동반이기 따와들라 야보지 고와 자마시와이나 베남 어디니 풍네 네 풍세다 랑신게 마주 세대 최든지 여바 많이 세지라 고네 아니 가서는 여바 많이 받대바이나 체다로와 집에다 제디 제바디게 계제 제다디게 따와디 켈렘바이나 아니 가서나지 라니 분이 가서나 체다를 홍는 연송 동적이 주사교에서 풍화 주루스 어디 임바디 다 자와시랍이 되니 제와되니 가서는 반년 나와 잡고 제와 치선 나와 다 레시 가데 담제 동바데스 탐지 여바 마이노 시에 동난이 있어와 최담제다 콜로 바비가서 최담제더니 지 가다래 여바 마인 스니다 세데 랑싱이 여바 마인 세 랑싱이 여바 마인 비 군센데 아니 땡땡비 지 군센 땡땡지게 삼마마당와치 아니 최담제 여바 마인 바 다랑게 병아라비 지시디 자와와 최담제 우미지비 가자레스 오다 딘데베더니 랑싱 마주바디게 군센도 전에 최담제 여바 마인노 시에 마와이나 아니 딘데 마게 켈링에 가사고랑 아니 로바 따와 로바나 뚱네 체다게 따와디 온도 손네 아니 라니 풍와 주와레 스노다 반된 따와 잡아다 공부를 주기 니가기다 간다 똥바니들라 랑싱의 마주베 똥니 세디 아니 군센데 여바 많이 받주고 말했다 여바 많이 받주고 켈레나 아니 여바 매바 최담지 여바 많이 받 켈리비 체다게 따와 녀바디랑 켈렘바이나 아니 라니 랭에 속비 줄라 두그레 스도와 셰라 충나 풍와 주루 어디 송도 와스 디스디다 가르송 거스나 다 랑시게 마두바당 랑싱게 여바 많이 봐 랑운의 여바 많이 받아 여바 많이 받니 개발 제거레스 어다 개발 제마시 원게 아니 랑시게 여바 많이 송에디 아니 여바 많이 세데 고네 하더니 따와니마 딘데게 켈렘바이나 아니 랭에 쏘바레 세게 쿵딜라 콘도 제름지 송소와 어디를 쿵딜라다 자와시라당 아니 제와시세 빠네 다와트 비슝니 쿵당네 어디는 송샤스
Similarly, Nagarjuna's fundamental treatise says, if they view emptiness in the wrong way, those of limited intelligence will be ruined. So now there's another source, quotation from a source text. So this is, again, coming straight from Nagarjuna, talking about how, the view that if you don't have the view that phenomena are empty are not established within nature, but then you take emptiness to mean that phenomena don't exist at all, and what the problem with that is. And so this is talking about taking emptiness, but having your way of regarding emptiness or your view towards emptiness not being precise and accurate. So when your view of emptiness is like this, it's sort of like people who aren't, what's the word? We usually just say, those of lesser faculties or weaker faculties. So, people who have this, are, can't understand this clearly. So this is a mistake that's made. And so they fall into this, again, the view of annihilation. It's the extreme of annihilation. And this is why it's said that there will be, the phrases, there will be ruined. Okay, that's how it's here. So there will be ruined, which those of limited intelligence will be ruined. So will be ruined means, they create a big problem for themselves. It leads to their downfall, their ruin. Okay, and so this is talking about the middle turning of the wheel of Dharma. The middle turning of the wheel of Dharma does have statements which literally say all phenomena are not existent. But what happens is people will hear statements like that and then take them literally and not understand that they need to be, that the meaning of those statements is that all phenomena do not exist by way of the nature, and they're not thinking about the reason for phenomena not existing with the nature as being because they're dependently related or dependent arising. So they're not combining, that reasoning with these statements about emptiness. So again, they just have this, give rise to a wrong view by way of, but because of not, to summarize, because it comes down to them not being able to distinguish non-existence by way of a nature from non-existence, or existence from the phenomena's own side, right? The phenomena existing, or phenomena not existing from their own side versus phenomena not existing, or being non-existent completely. So this is, again, the view, they generate the view that phenomena just don't exist. And then from that, it leads to the accumulation of negative karma. And then that leads to the falling into the lower realms. So this is another source. So up in the earlier portions of the section, Tsongkhapa J. Rinpoche had used, source text from Nagarjuna, from Chandakirti, and so he's giving, again, reiterating these points to summarize what was said above.
Oh yeah. 지게도스 최디 로바 송주는 미겐남니 추견서 디더 메바다와이 미상디니 칭와주로 셰셰도스다 쿵신다 다게디 가스나 우마자와시라당 아니 제바치세 빠는다베 슝니 쿵다마세 다 지게도 된다디 우마린지 정을 쓰기지로 우마린지 칭은 나라와 아니 최디 로바 송주나 미겐남니 추견서 세대당 동반이라 따니는 시랍주는 풍화주로 세디 둔다 저우리 다 최디 세디 동반이 디스와 랑싱게 마주비 동니디 아니 삼로야보 디스는 다지 고체바야 보시는 랑싱 마주비 군생 가리레스 아니 길이 내세디 딱다지 하마고 와치니 최담지 랑싱게 요바 많이 순점nen되기 숭어디 요바 많이 바지라 고네더니 켈렘바이나 어단 최디 롱바 순나니 미케남니 추견 사스니다 디기다 동반이기 되라 미케바 된소 아니 추자랑이 풍어주와레 추사당 데가스나 타바다 탐제 쳔바 톱지기 람레드님 파가스나 타바다 탐제 쳔바 줍지기 람디 아니 소소라다 베 장run도 두고 왔다 추세부터 틀어주고 왔다 로종 제디 동니 또에디 랑주기다 뉴모 말이 다 바자다 제바 메바 수에 아니 탐제 쳔바 고마 토베 주도지 로종 지가 지고르데 이내양 다 동니 디기 고아디티니 지다와신도 말로 바이나 아니 라니 동 아니 가스나 탈바다 탐지 쳔바 토베기 주들 예루주에 파시는 배 장르부르도 아니 틀어주고 그래스 추장사 서와 다 간데스는 추사와레스나 디더 메바타와이 미잔티니 칭와주스 다 가스나 최담제랑 신게 마주바디 세디기 아니 가스나 오랑원이 좋아다 가스나 고랑 또비 따자 많이 유바디 탄녀답이 따도서는 녀바서 딘데지기 고아디기 랑싱 주바세 딘데지기 돈에 디 마주바 세드라 삼모마당 와체 유바 많이 세지기 딘데기 삼모다네 디달 메바타와 있으면 유바 많이 바켈레나 메다켈레 말와 오 단이 메바타와이 미상디네 징와주로 오다 미상위 동나를 호안낭신 아니 동안 나반나서 깨기더니 녀소나 동아주리에 스타 메다 체다디르와 어디라도 다 동반이기 따와디 당가라도 메바요 와와 동반이 따와디 켈랭 동나 삼마와 다 동반이 따와지 깨고도 삼리 딘디지 메바요르데 이내 동반이데 간레지도 레샤스니 아니 배 삼모야부 땅에다 동반이기 드니 곰잡연데 딘데게 곰잡서게 동반이디 간레지 바지 내세 따다지 말로 바이나 아니 소소라다지 똑바제 당 소소주기 니모도 숨도 저에 파셔는 망도 주니 아니 년송 동이 줄라 주고 어디 뒤쪽에 쿵디 다 다기 자와시라는 동반이라 따니는 시는 지금 풍화 주 세당 디급수 최디 로발 송하는 미현는 추장사 소다 된다 디기 쿵당에다 지름지기 가스나 아니 병아라비 랑싱 마주바 세디 요바 많이 바지를 지시자로와 최담지 아니를 요밥 최담지 우미르비 각자리 각자 첩침부 휴지 샤르와 오다 디미리고 쿵직 오다 디니마 도스니 되용도스
So another quotation, commenting on this, Chandrakirti's clear word says, if on the one hand you were to think all is empty, that is, does not exist, then you would be viewing emptiness in the wrong way. In this vein, Nagarjuna's precious Darwin says, if this teaching is misunderstood, it ruins the unwise, for they sink into the filth of nihilistic views. So then now there's more quotations given, and here we have this quotation from the Precious Garland. It's very similar to the one from the Fundamental Treatise above. And so it's reiterating the same point here. And when it says this teaching here, it means this teaching on emptiness, this emptiness really means this emptiness. And so when you have the interest in emptiness and are trying to meditate on it, but without understanding the reason for why phenomena are not established by way of the nature, and you're not able to, clearly and accurately understand that, then you fall into this overly broad object of negation, which becomes the extreme view of the extreme of annihilation. And for those people, then they actually get further and further away from liberation and the omniscient consciousness, or the knower of all phenomena. So this is because, again, they don't get closer to it, they actually get further away from it. And so when it says it ruins, I think, again, it's here the word ruins is saying, it's actually a different Tibetan word than ruined in the above verse from the Fundamental Treatise. So this ruins means that it's sort of like food, like food getting spoiled. It like spoils, or it wastes. It brings it to waste. So it and it the people, right? It ruins. It spoils. It brings them to waste. It makes them go to waste. Okay, and so this is true of those people, even if they have a genuine interest in emptiness, right? So they want to go and study emptiness, and they have this interest in it, and they think that, oh, I need to meditate on emptiness and realize it. But then when they actually go to meditate on emptiness and to identify what it is, then they have the wrong understanding of it. And so it becomes, again, instead of a cause, instead of allowing them to accumulate causes for liberation and the knower of all phenomena, instead they get further from it. And what do then? They, again, they're not able to understand that what emptiness means is that phenomena are not established from their own side. They're merely labeled by conceptuality, conceptual mind, and the meaning of emptiness said in another way, that the object, which is designated by terminology, when you go to find it, the designated object, then you can't find it. There's no finding of the designated object. So that's the meaning of emptiness, but they're, some people not able to see that. Then instead they create many negative karma and causes for all sorts of varieties of suffering and falling into the lower realms. And so this is again how J. Rinpoche is showing that this view of earlier generations of Tibetans is where they're way to their identification of what's to be negated in Madhyamaka reasoning is much too broad, is much bigger than is really what's intended by the text. That's all.
Oh yeah. 지대양 탐제로 꾸어 대바 미드나니 디제 지들 응고 디다 미수 신장 동반이도 줄데스 디에치르스 랑신기 메비 되니 동반이기 되 많이 노시에 디 예버 동반이기 뽕아 줄데스 대대로 뽕네 최기 뽕바 유안이 레 예버라 연조 조바 주루스 어다디 다 쿵직다기 단 제름지 갈송을스나 게스르와다 랑싱 마주비 똥니디르와 아니 켈림비 때네 최담지 여바 많이 놓았으니다 디 여바 많이 비 꾸디네 가스나 여바 많이 바디 켈레 마두와지르와 다가스나 랑싱 마주나 랑싱 주바 세디 여바라 샹네 여바를 로스 랑싱 주바기 남셔데 마셔와지 랑싱 여바 세디 여바 담라셔네 랑싱 주비 똥와레 라디 여바 많이 세지 고네다 꾸데를 탈라 룽도 삼니 다 꾸데 미디어나스는 최담제 유바 많이 봐 켈레니 미디어를 가서나 디즈를 다 최담제니 아니 무슨도 통해 요래 다 요바래 아니 다 딜라도 다 랑싱게 동비 랑싱게 동바리라나 유바 많이 봐줄 샤고도 인사로 유바 많이 세디 아니 랑싱게 아니 가리래 동바 많이 받아 네 집에 온도 치는 샤와이나 디사마르 디자 랑싱게 마주비 동니 랑싱게 마주바 세디 동니 담바 말에 스노다 로다 가스나 동니라다 로다 계단데 되는스와 동니 고아대 뭐 말인데 랑싱기 유바 많이 세다 유바 많이 세디 에와마 체마셰와체 다 랑싱기 유바 많이 세디 유바 많이 발아 샹나니 아니 다 최담제니 되는 무슨도 동에 요래 유바 많이 세디 샤르나 가르스 용구래 딘제 인상 다 유바이나 랑싱기 유바양 고도 인자 랑싱기 마주비 동니 담바 말에 스니 원사 동반이라 다 가서는 로바직 순에 따다들라 다게들라다 구데블로바 루와다 딘다디 따다기 로바 순네 루와 다 딘데베 딘데베 루와 랑싱기 마주바디 동니 담바 말에 랍단데 가서는 랑싱기 마주바이나 유바 많이 세지기 삼무지 당도 유바 많이나니 최담제 믹스 무슨도 통해요리스 무슨도 통일라 유바 많이 쓰나 지금도 인도산에 유바 많이 비 구데비 탈라샤나 지금도 딘데 인상 랑싱기 마주바디 동니 담바 말에 쓰는다 동반이 드니 뽕와 다 랑싱 마주비 동니디 다 우리신나 동니 담바디르데 이네 동니 담바지 말에 섬에게 딘데 동니 아니 초봉길에 싸운 거래 다 초봉길에 싸왜 딘데 왜 동반이라 드니 유바 랑싱기 마주비 동니데 동니 담바 말에 쓰다 초봉길에 싸바디 다 년조 조에게 배 dobjen 사고레스 네버도 년조 조바주로 세데다 동반이라와 동반이 좀 된되게 최점제 랑싱 마주비 동니디 동니 담바 말에 스니 라연데 동반이 빵는 거. 다 동반이 빵배인데 아니 가릴리고 그랬으나 아니 강사디 아니 연조 조에게 초봉길에 dobjen 사고레스 다 초봉 세데다 로와 최 많이 바지 최를 하면 초봉길에 최 양다바 임바지 최 말에서는 초봉길에 그래서 초봉길에 세데다 말한조다 롭종 치긴 다지 최라 띵네 롭종 치긴 줄라 다 삼무당다 마시네 또 년가요 로와 인도산이 다고 케말레 고네 담부디 컨데르도 신다 14부 롭종 치에다 제름지든다 개부 휴지 송도와 오다 디가스나 동반이게 따와드니 고고리 가서 고와 타달라 연로든다 고베 동아 타다기 자와 당징이 메바소발라 동반이 따와면 디고 말 다 동반이데 간절히 세들었더니 롭종 티친 부시베 자치부 마체와 아니 배 중중중중기 삼모 땅에 좋아이나 보다 딘데기 년가요래 병아라바들라 디 년가들 레와라 어디인자 다 딘데기 돈에다 돈이기 따와디 뽕고게 야나 체달라와 또랑싱이 마주와 켈리메데네 최단지 메바주와레 세게 메달라 통로게 다 딘데기 간다 만들 초봉게 랭엔니 사에기다 탈레 대면도 다 디규어 가르스나 랑싱기 마주바디 고아야부 말려바체 아니 랑싱기 마주 세 랑싱기 요바이 말에 랑원에 주바 말에 세는데 되네 요바 많이 세 다가랑라 삼모 땅와이나 보다 딘데기 초봉게 레사네 년조 조그레 스노다 제름지고다 쿵직도 순다고도
If, on the other hand, suppose that you do not deny all phenomena, but then say, we have seen these things, how could they be empty? Therefore, an absence of intrinsic existence is not what emptiness means. in that case, you have definitely abandoned emptiness. After you have abandoned emptiness in this way, you will definitely be reborn in a miserable realm due to this action of depriving yourself of the true teaching. So now we have the other possible fault where, people, so in one case, you have the meaning of emptiness being phenomena being empty of establishment through a nature. And so someone accepts emptiness, but then they imagine, or they add on to the actual meaning of emptiness that it's actually all phenomena being not existent as the meaning of emptiness. Then that's falling into this extreme of deprecation, this view of deprecation. Now, if someone then says, well, okay, if the emptiness, they don't recognize that emptiness means emptiness of being established within nature, when they hear about emptiness, and they're, and this the same fault where they equate, not being established within nature as phenomena simply not being existent. Then they go and say, well, that's obviously wrong because we can see phenomena we can see the phenomena exist. So we can see that this isn't the actual teaching of emptiness because phenomena exist. So it can't be that they don't exist. So then not being established within nature is not the meaning of emptiness. So this is, as it says, therefore, an absence of intrinsic existence is not what emptiness means. So here again, it's the same initial mistake, is that they're equating not being established within nature as with being not existent. But then they, instead of accepting emptiness and denying all phenomena, they say, well, that's not possible. Phenomena are like that because we can see they exist. So for that person, they just don't accept that not being established within nature is the meaning of emptiness, and then they abandon the teaching on emptiness. So this is an act of abandoning the Dharma, which is a great negativity. And so again, it comes down to not being able to distinguish non-existence by way of nature from non-existence. And so then someone who says that, then they're not, again, it comes from not understanding emptiness properly, but they do this action of abandoning the Dharma, which is, what does it mean to abandon the Dharma? It's when you take a pure Dharma teaching, a perfect pure good Dharma teaching, and you say that's not Dharma. Okay? So when you take something which is a Dharma teaching and say that's not the Dharma. Okay, and so that's a really big risk if we want to understand emptiness and study it, but we don't study broadly enough. If we don't have a really broad and complete study of the text on emptiness, and we just study a little bit of texts, then we can easily develop these wrong views. So it's a big risk. This is exactly what actual, earlier generations of Tibetans have done. And so we can see that it's a, genuine risk. So again, it all comes down to not being able to understand what it means to say that phenomena are not established by way of nature. That's all.
Oh yeah. 다 지게도 르부지 청와레스 시행 디니 로소나 lumbu kebe ngaje jins pongwa marung danyi jin namye bani chizuk dos chiwusuk do she do she sung chirus oda da di kasna da bani dawa chabu shung yage khung dangni ma yong rin da gung tamada lung tagi nube tarung kasna umarin jichimur tagi lung tangbudi jangwa nangshin tarung lung shen kardusna shen dini losuna lumbu kebe ngaje jins 다 시행 스르 준세 시행 아니 디니 로수나스나 동반니 랑싱이 마주비 동니디라 로바수나 로바수나디 디라 랑싱 마주바 세디 랑싱 마주비 동니디 아니 최담지 여바 마인바 세 대점라시 고아나 이나 다 동반니라 로바수마리 다 랑싱기 마주비 동니디 여바 마인바 짬지 로바수나 오다 동반니기 되 양다 마시베 되니 룸보레스 다 다른 룸보 인기라 아니 소소게 다른 동니 동반니기 되 시기요 된도서는 계획이 되는 아지 다 소소 된달라 동반니기 되 미시베 가서는 랑싱기 마주바당 랑싱기 여바 많이 받아 여바 많이 받니기 에와제 마시베 되는 랑싱기 마주 소 동니디 여바 많이 받좀 놓고 로와다 병아라 발라티 견 찍발리고 어와 다 우마른 이제 정원하라 디송도와 최담제로 여바 많이 랑싱 마주 세게 고아디 말룸바이나 아니 여바 많이 세지기 고아지가 두고 여바 랑싱이 여바 많이 세데 다 여바 많이 세 고알 숭아이나 아니 체다를 홍아와 체다게 체바다 위 따와디기 땅에 디당 랑싱 마주 돈이 찍바스다 켈린로 지고 다 켈린게 간사디 가리차와서는 밀룸보 동반이기로 와다 무슨 대등행이 슝 장대다 년도기 슝이 에와제 마투베 띵네 아니 동반이기 되라 몸비 룸보 다 딘데지 임발라 다양 고랑게 로메디라 동니 되네 동반이 된 도비 개발인 키빙 아제진 딘데로와 개발 로빙 아제진 서와 딘데와 디기 되니 뽕와 다 뽕와스도 동반이기 된 뽕와와 동반이기 된 뽕나데 그랬으나 최담지 여바랑싱이 여바 많이 세디 여바 많이 비 대점기 땅니다 켈레 말와 다 여바 많이 바 대점기 켈레나 체다다 직바 차와와 집이 도와데 저와 다 체다를 홍로 강사디 아니 동반이기 따와디 뽕와와 동반이기랑 심마주비 돈이 양타바디 아니 베야 초이바디 돈이 담바이바디 빵네 아니 체다기 되는 따와다 네 집어 차와와 어다 뽕아 마rum바스다 시주 마rum 왕기다 뒷봉이 땡네더니 다른 아니 키빙 아제기 마루바 셈 마루베 딘데 왜 다니지 스리다 딘데 동반이기 되미 시신도 다른 배 라시 마루와디 여바 많이 바 대점게 동네 아니 대시 자겐디 단 딘데 왜 강사 수이네디 아니 나르메 바이다 냐와 나르메 세제로와 냐와 나니다 냐와 마게 다 냐와 나르메 세제 다 냐와 나르메 스키다 조단디 지수 지우마 고딩론이 고 살아주는 쪽에 어다 딘데나도 다 니손 딘데기 다 최봉기 레 동반이기 되 시지로도 매네 최봉기 레사 티원기 답에 니손기 나네베 니손 믿음에와 나르메기 되네 어다 딘데기 되네 제와 아니 고 살아주는 쪽에 딘데나라 제와 두레 스노다 고물루 숨와디 반는다와 저 쿵당네 식사나라 어다 딘데기 통이다 도르수드나 랑싱기 여바 많이 비동니디 여바 많이 세 주불로 권다 되게 말했습니다. 제름지기다 룽디 쿵당네 병아라 발라 로와 반는다와 저와당 고물루 룽디 쿵당네 다 랑싱기 마주 세디 여바 많이 세들 권다 되게 말했습니다. 디베 양세 제시 자고와디 다티 딘데기다 랑싱 마주 고와디 벨레 카부슈지 로와 디기 고아디 르마 되원게 아니 레라보지도네 여바마이 세 대점게 대시 자와이나 되네 동반이게 따와 뽕네 아니 최봉게 레 똑진 답에 네바드네 사니 아니 예송베 두초 단냐와 나르메세게 나라 아니 딘데나 도와 송샤스
gana dan michi lesson ge que je chego ese le gobo michi shala lesson
오예
Oh, going again. Robot solution. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that the lapsang tagi la jodara odire.
This.
Oh yeah.
Okay, sorry, someone just arrived looking for someone, so I have to after them. Okay, so then the quote from oh um, yeah, the next one is the quote from Nagarjuna's Precious Garland. As Nagarjuna's Precious Garland says, further, if they misunderstand this, fools who take pride in their supposed wisdom will destroy themselves by abandoning it and fall headfirst to the unrelenting hell. So this is again another quotation. So using quotations from Chandrakirti's Clear Words, from the Fundamental Treatise in the Middle Way, and now more from the Precious Garland. And so this is likewise saying how so again you're having this, you're grasping emptiness to in a mistaken way. You're holding emptiness in a mistaken way for a person who does that. And in this context, it's when they are saying that phenomena are non-existent, or they do not exist. So this is when you have this kind of wrong view, then you're saying you believe or think, oh, I understand emptiness, and you have this pride. You take pride in your understanding of emptiness. This is a sort of, kind of over estimation of your own understanding, overestimation of yourself, which is this kind of pride. And then you say, oh, I know emptiness. Phenomena, it means phenomena don't exist. And so this is once again at the extreme of annihilation. And so it's saying these fools, right? So then it's like becoming a foolish person, a stupid person with regard to emptiness. And you don't understand that there's a difference between, or you're not able to clearly distinguish the difference between the provisional teachings and the definitive teachings, or the provisional meaning and the definitive meaning. Provisional also can mean provisional teaching being those that are intended to be interpreted, versus the definitive, which are definitive ones. So then you have this sort of sense that you understand emptiness properly. You have an arrogance about it. So that kind of person also is actually abandoning emptiness, because they're taking the meaning of emptiness to be merely that phenomena don't exist, are not existent. You have that extreme of annihilation as your understanding of emptiness, but the actual meaning of emptiness is not like that. So it ends up being the same point as abandoning emptiness. Right? So before the people who abandoned emptiness, as described earlier, were the ones who just say, well, we see phenomena exist, so it can't be that, the emptiness of inherent existence is the meaning of emptiness, so they abandoned emptiness. But here it's actually the same point, because they're just taking emptiness in the wrong way, which means they're abandoning the ultimate emptiness, the actual fundamental meaning of emptiness. They're abandoning the genuine emptiness. They're abandoning. So this kind of person, likewise, they fall into this hell realm. So this is called, I think the Sanskrit is a Vichi hell, the unrelenting hell. So one of the types of hell realms. And so they will fall into this, hell realm. There's that danger. And so the reason for giving all these different quotations and really reiterating this point so many times is because it's very difficult to distinguish between not existing by way of nature and non-existence, or so because it's very difficult to develop an understanding of what it means to not be non-existent by way of a nature, then or to be empty of existing by way of a nature, then it's then this is why Tsongkhapa is giving so much effort to explain these faults that can come with misunderstanding the meaning of emptiness. That's all.
도체. 가데 코장 오보는 ngar 켈란이 치 메바다는 메바다와 규양 코전에 되만은 대다 요바 미되베 지식 쳐봤다와 줄데스 문중 다다 메제바 되나 쳐봤다와 줄 시에 된다와라 쳐봤다와 송싱스다 다딜라 된다디 가서나 랑싱게 마주바기 된 켈림베 때네 디 아니 가서나 랑싱게 마주바스디 요바 많이 받zam기 고나 제다를 흥그레스니까 나다 저름지기 다 룽쿵장이 망부지 대시 잡사서와 다 딜라 추 나라베 다 된다 디 저름지 다디 송아르와 랑싱이 마주바디 여바 많이 받zam라 코니 아니 동반이게 되는 남자 제와이나 체달을 흥구레스 다고 체달 흥구 말했어 미니면 여서나 코자네 오보 남승 다 내가 저 가르치나다 다 바로 나라 가자 잡체와 되긴디 가서나 가리라와스나 저 체달을 흥구 좀 매와디 가서나 체다스디 오보 남을 켈랑네 치 매바 따와지라 체달라고 그랬어 얘기 오보 근데 대만이 대다 여바 미드스다 최담지 여바 마인 세저로다 띵가마 유 진다 메세 통마면 데비 내가서 여바 마인 다다위 내가서 여바 마인 매바 마우비 내가서 여바 마인 세게 남샤디 켈레 말와 다 딜라디 다디 나르 여바 켈레네 진다 매바 켈레네 저라 체다를 흥와디 저라 데마레스 이나야 나르 여바 켈레메스 먼저 체다를 가니스 룽그레스 다 체다스디 나르 여바 켈레네 진다 매바 켈레 가지고 와디 구물루두기 문중 다다 매제바 되나 쳐봤다 와 줄수 송도 왔어 나르 여바 켈레네 대다 매바 켈 대다 매바 아니 매바 켈레나 아니 체다를 흥그레스니 근데 송샤마도 지기 랑싱의 마주바 켈레베 되는 매바 켈레나 체다를 흥그레스디 송문도 있어 인도산에 나르 여바 켈레베 되는 대다 여바 마이너스 나와이나 어다 딘데게 되는 체달로 교여 땡하고 체달로 교매스니 다 가자 캡체와 되베디 아니 운중 다다 매제와 세 룽디기다 공양 디실 로바지 잡소와 인상 운중 다다 매제와 되나 제바 타와 주르스 나르 여바 켈레네 된다 매바 켈레나 체다 주그레스니 디시 쿵직디 무슨 장네 셰샤스
If we had claimed that there were real things and then later viewed them as non-existent, then we would have a view of annihilation. However, we do not accept their existence from the outset. What is annihilated so as to make this a view of annihilation? Whereas Nagarjuna's fundamental treatise says, if you say that what arose before is now non-existent, that entails annihilation. This is now, you have a defense coming from those Tibetans who have this overly broad identification of the object of negation. And so they're saying, again, that when they hear, phenomena, instead of understanding emptiness to mean phenomena are not established by nature, they're just thinking all phenomena are not existent. But then they defend themselves saying, well, this doesn't mean that we're falling into an extreme of annihilation, because what is the extreme of annihilation? It's when you think that something which existed before in the past, now in the present, doesn't exist. Why? Well, this is what Nagarjuna said in the fundamental treatise. He said, if you say that what arose before is now non-existent, that entails annihilation. But for us, these Tibetans who have an overly broad identification of the object of negation, they would defend themselves saying, for us, we're not saying that something which existed before is now non-existent. Our position is in the past, phenomena are non-existent, in the present they're non-existent, and in the future phenomena are non-existent. So in all times they're non-existent. From the start, they're non-existent. So because Nagarjuna gave this quote, this is a quote from Nagarjuna, what he said, he's not saying that the view that phenomena are never from the start existent is a view of annihilation. He's saying that whatever was before is now non-existent in the present, then that's a view of annihilation. So our view is not a view of annihilation. That's the form, the defense that they're giving of themselves. So,
oh yeah. Sisa lejans nanjurba kunzugi demba misheba tsamgi kebas rangshi meba tone ti tongba nigi tuen dambi tsini jin toba ni tani su tongwa mijurdes kanshi dada meba juba ti tsenani chishiyeba juru she dedar ngar ngobo rangshingi mamik baba chijang meba nidu midola she sungbe chiru nyamna tini rikba mayinde soda dukshini kasana 다 그게 가자 찹체와 등이 룽쿵 신다 식사기 룽단으로 엄마 식사 나라 가르송셨으나 아니 난저바 왔다 또니 또 베타와 냠술링게 난저바 주게 아니 군족의 덴바 미셰바 짬기 개바스 두다 군족의 덴비 최든조 미셰바 마리바 짬기 아니 랑시 메신도 랑시 마주나 랑시 주바 나에게 딘데 나와디 개바디 딘데게 개게 나와디 랑심에바 똥나 똥반이게 되는데 친이지 또는 탄이도 동안 미흡스다 딘데 왜 미시비 몽베왕게 되니 랑심 주바 나위 준바 최진 등조 강가 랑심 마주베 똥니게 따와디 똑바이나 아니 딘데 왜 강사디 따와님 탄이라 동안 미주데스 강시다 든다도다 가스나 다 난주바르와 동료들에 따와 님술 난주바디게 군주비 다든다디 룽디 되는데 소월다 군주비 된 돈이 미시비 몽비 우왕기 아니 랑신 마주나 랑신 주바 나위 나와 계획이 딘디 군주비 최는조 아니 랑신 메바 돈네 아니 돈이게 돈이게 되니 랑신게 마주비 돈이 된다 미친이 돈은 아니 탄이라 돈가 주고 말해스 강시 다다 메바 주와 디스는 지시여 봐 줬어 인도전에 다 된다왜 최 강다 강의 랑신게 마주바 아니 다다 매바이나 아니 데모 투수야 된대기 요와 남자 요 말에 시 대다른 걸 무부 랑신 마미 양 치매바니도 미도라스 아니 단다양 마주와 마세 응아리양 데뷔 되나양 무부 랑신 주바 미요 말에 다다왜 투수야 미요 말에 인도산이 미요 말스는 요바 요 말에스 매와 어디 매바디 다 간데스니다 랑신 주비드니 따위팅라 연구래 딘데 손상 랑신기 마주비 돈이 돈나 아니 로바 대바양 랑신 마주바 미바 다다양 랑신 마주바 미바 충바래 인도산이 랑신 마주비 탄이도비 남샤디 아니 가스나 로라 차용외선 되니 따지기 따니라 동화 두고 말해스 어다 딘데 룽드 쿵당내로와 아니 병아라바선다 가자 캡체와 누겐디기 다 가스나 랑싱이 마주바 따와 켈렘바점기 체달라 룽고 말해 스네다 쿵디 딘다디 오마 츠사기 룽데 두스는 쿵당샤스
thus Nagarjuna says that such is a view of annihilation. Also, Chandrakirti's clear words says, yogis do not fall to the two extremes if they know that conventional truths, which are produced only by ignorance, lack intrinsic existence, and then know that the emptiness of those has the character of the ultimate. They think, how could something which has now become non-existent have existed then? Since they do not regard earlier things as having had intrinsic nature, they do not think that such later become non-existent. Now, this is giving another quotation to that those who assert this overly broad identification of the object to be negated, they are using this as part of their defense. They're saying they don't fall into the extreme of annihilation because of this other quote from Chandrakirti. And so, what is the quote actually saying? Let's look at. So, this is saying for the yogis. Now, yogis here, those are people who are meditating, practicing the view of emptiness, meditating on the view of emptiness. They have this, appearance of. Anyway, they have the appearance of phenomena. They experience and have the appearance that phenomena are not established by a nature, not established with a nature, and so they have the realization. They realize that phenomena are not established by way of a nature, and so then they don't fall into either of the two extremes. So if they know that conventional truths, so this is saying they don't fall into the two extremes because they realize phenomena are not established within nature. And so then from that, they realize that, that the appearing conventional phenomena are kind of produced by this ignorance which is confusion that doesn't know how phenomena are. It's ignorance which is a confusion which does not know. And so so again, it's now talking sort of about past and the present. So there's, a realization that, well, there's the person is able to observe clearly. They're able to realize or observe that the present phenomena are not established as real entities. And so then they also are able to, from that, realize that past phenomena are not, they observe that the past phenomena are not established as real entities as well. And so then this is the actual meaning of the quote, right? So then they're not thinking that something which existed before became non-existent, but they're observing accurately, meaning realizing they're observing that the present phenomena are not existent as real entities, and they're also observing past phenomena are not existent as real entities. And so so they have this understanding that's clearly appearing in their mind about the meaning of emptiness. So they don't fall into the two extremes. That's all.
Oh yeah, 도체. 다 되는 식바 마인데 체다 월하스 강 치주 뭐bungar 켈랑 바 권한이 지된 장배배 장스 안 생가지 당스 렌제소 나르 켈랑의 치매바 미마이스 대다 되만이 여바 미되베스 체다 많이 바 타베치로스 다 지름지 갈송을스나 다 가져 첩치와 되윈디기 자와시라당 아니 식세니 와 공부를 주신다 받는다 와도 쉬운이 쿵 장내 가르쳐 거스나 체다 동을 꿰메스 가서 체다세데 응아르 요바 켈리는 진다 메바 켈린 바지 고랭에 응아르 요바 켈리는 진다 메바 켈레 뭐 많이 스네 딜라인데 다 딘데 체다를 홍알라 응아르 요바 켈린 진다 메바 켈린 바고나 다 지름지기 파 가바자르 와다 딘데 라규나 아니 장변바데더니 다 가서는 체달라 말롱아 주그래 저런다나 가서는 장변베기와 아니 레 준데라 소바 깨왕가지라 소바더니 나를 요바 켈레네 딘다 메바 켈레 바디 말어 왔고 나리양 메 딘다이 메스그와 깨왕가지다 레 준데라 딘와 오 딘데기다 딘데기 남샤디 응르와 녜마야 메 딘다이 메스라고 왔어 다고팀 아니 장변 딘데 장변디 체달을 홍어요 말을 했어 저런다나 체달라 말롱라 그래 가서나 깨왕가마다 치마든서 나를 요바 켈레네 딘다 켈레 바디 메바 켈레 바디 말어 왔어 와 저런게 가서는 딜라르와다 체달을 홍와서 내가를 요바 켈렌 된다 메바 켈렌 바지 고래 나와 있나 다 장배 받아서 체달을 홍이 가서 말을 장배게 따와르와 깨왕같이 메바다 왜 따와디 체다 말을 체바다 왜 따와디 말을 왜 뒤에 장배바 코란 체달을 홍아 말을 왜 저는 많이 받아 아니 그 깨왕같이라 소바데다 나를 된다 메 마스 위치스 로다 고직 바탕 거와 저름지로와 인도자니 저런 게 체다세디 나를 요바 켈레네 된다 메바 켈레 바지 고래 사실 원주 다다 메제바 룬드랑도 왔어 인도자니 되게 말했어 저런 제시 딜레 라와이나 장배바디 아니 체달라 말루라고 지그래 체달라 말루에 타와주고 그래스디 다 체달라 말루라고 지그래 장배바디 체달을 홍하러 왔어 제왕같이 아니 미데베 체달을 홍하셔고 하러 왔어 와그 장배베 타와디 개왕가마다 치마니 매 스니르와 아다 되디 녜마야 메바 되고 딘다야 메바 되고 다 딘델라도 아고 체달을 홍아 말에 가서는 나를 여바 켈린 대다 메바 켈린 바디 말아와 스니 다디 고승을 비고네 아니 저랑게 체달라 말루스에게 고와디 디기민도 소다 룽디 다 저름지기다 쿵장의 디기 말에 스니다 두스는 바 가바자샤스
Reply, this is not reasonable. Your supposition is that in order to have a view of annihilation, one must assert the earlier existence of whatever thing is annihilated later. In that case, it would absurdly follow that even the Lokayata proponents of materialism would not have a view of annihilation. For it is not their claim that past and future lives, karma and its effects, etc., once existed and later became non-existent. They do not accept such as having existed in the first place. So now this is taking the defense that was given by those who assert this overly broad object of negation. And in their defense, they're given quotations, one from the Gaijina's fundamental treatise and one from Chandrakirti's clear words. And in those quotations, again, the sort of literal reading is saying, well, the view of annihilation is when you say or believe something which existed before does not exist now, it became non-existent now. And so what Rinpoche now is saying, is giving a reply to refute that defense, to say that's not a reasonable defense, because if you say that, that's the only way. What are they saying again? That the only way you can have a view of annihilation is if you believe something which existed before is now non-existent. Well, then what about the Lokayata? These are the Tibetan term for the school is like Yang Kampa, which is also can just be called the materialists. Or physicalists, materialists or physicalists. So they, so just as a note, it's kind of didn't explicitly say, but just understood that, so this is sort of within Buddhists, it's universally understood that they hold an extreme view of the extreme of annihilation. So that's just a given. So then Tsongkhapa is using that as the reason, right? So you already accept, for these other Tibetans, earlier generation of Tibetans, you already accept that the materialists, and again here the term materialism isn't talking about, liking possessions and stuff. It means philosophical materialism. So maybe physicalism is better. So those physicalists, they have this extreme of annihilation, right? And they don't accept something which was existing before is now non-existent. They also assert things like future and past lives, karma and its effects. They simply assert they're non-existent and that they were never existent. They weren't existent in the past, they're non-existent now. It's not that they're giving the view that something existed before and has become non-existent. So if you're saying that that's the only way to have a view of annihilation, well then what would be the consequence? Then these physicalists also do not have a view of annihilation, right? That's what Rinpoche is saying for these. That's the reasoning he's using. He's taking the reason that was just given by the in the defense of the Tibetans who have the overly broad identification of the object to be negated. And he's saying, well, then this other philosophical school, which you already, accept and, has a view of annihilation, then they also wouldn't have a view of annihilation because they're not taking something which existed before and saying it doesn't exist now. And so, this one.
어다 도시는 다들인 치에 섬디가 전샤게인스 아니 다들인 아주 치에게 슝디 낭된니 돈에다 제시자병 두시 가스나 따지기 다 따바당 체다기 따와 따지기 탄이도 외마수나 동반이기 따와디 또 투구 말에 세계로와 동반이기 따와 찜어도 균직 따지기 탄이디기 고아디 말로 말이나 아니 딘디기 다 좁아 친지로 딘디기 용어에게 있는가 요래 했으니보다 딘디기 고안이기 때문에 디링이 슝디 낭된디네지 나니 숭도 다들인데는 잠시하게 인터넷 지워지는 것으로 지했어요.
So we'll stop the explanation of the text here, and just to clarify or summarize that the two main points that were in this section that we went through today, there are two main points, and so they both related to if you're not able to correctly identify what is the two extremes, the extreme of annihilation and the extreme of permanence. And so for one, the first point or the first important topic with regard to that was to say that if you don't correctly identify those two extremes, you won't be able to develop the view of emptiness, the correct view of emptiness. And the second was then also, if you don't have that right understanding what the two extremes are, then it will give rise to these unsuitable kinds of debates and kind of have this wrong. You'll debate things that are not supported by good reasoning. And so now we can have a question and answer. If anyone has questions, you can ask them now.
Yeah, I have a question. Okay, so I don't think I ever was learned that somebody that does not practice the Dharma, if they don't practice the Dharma, they're not Buddhist, they're going to be reborn in a lower realm. I never was exposed to that teaching. And if that's true, that somebody that does not have any knowledge of the Dharma and therefore does not practice the Dharma, we cannot say that that person will be reborn in a lower realm. How can then we say with certainty, as it was presented here, that a righteous Buddhist that assiduously practices the Dharma, but happens to have a wrong view, not a proud wrong view, just a regular wrong view about emptiness, how can we say with certainty that he will be reborn in a lower realm? We can say that he's distancing himself from liberation. That's more makes sense. But how can we say from a righteous Buddhist that because he has a erroneous view, he'll be born in a lower realm? And Nagarjuna actually uses the word risky. I didn't hear Nagarjuna saying that he will be born in a lower realm. I heard maybe from a different source, but not from Nagarjuna. So that's basically my question. It's actually, it comes, it's like in a way, it's a deterioration of the debate. Like the debate was going beautifully back and forth about, no, you're wrong because of this.
So I'll just say it's the quote from Nagarjuna right here. It does say, "Fall head first to the unrelenting hell." So that's Nagarjuna. So just
okay,
so I'll ask. I got the question. I'll ask it just so we can, in the interest of time. I'll just. And by the way, this was addressed actually several, I guess probably several months ago by now. But there was a section of the text earlier where this point was made in another place, and the exact same question was asked because, of course, it's an important one. So again, the tombani chi ko the tanda di kapsu tombani ki go nor sona go local chi na sona ani nyawala kung it is like chi di gande trabo yongi de pena ani che kaya ma shebe mi chi nombe che kaya ma shebe mi nombe che nyamlen je tu ke mare ganza di yang chi ta nge bar du 그래서 that 도바 maybe 영화라 공기 레즈 타치니 랩투기 말아와 세상 넘바인 바식 아니 최 강투도 면은 제게나 아니 딱 동반이라 고어 따따만래 아니 제타 잡어 유라게 아니 띠 강사기양 아니 딱 지제나 탈바토기 말이었어 그냥 그래서 동반이라 그래서 영화라 딱 계속 maybe 영화라 공기 레스 다시 그 간다스다 투기래
어떤 디레 나디 동반이 따와디 마제는 냐와 통그레스 디라고 말레스 동반이기 따와디 고와 친지로 잡니 와 랑신게 마주비 돈이 양 타바 말레스니 소소가 바 양다기 째바치니 와든다 디 대바치고를 최고 돈이 디 말아서 디 시고 말지 바 양다기 돈이 시고 레스 균생찬니 다 소소 주기 뉴몬 강감 마방 아이나 소니 다 소소드니 야 탈바다 탐지진 바 토에메와 다 뉴몬 봉지기 탑 동료도 비신티니 루아 따와디 뉴몬기 짜와 당생이 뉴지 동료도 비 따와디 다 따와디 켈링기요 루아 켈링비 땡네 고아 치지로 잡나 아니 냐왈 동그레 디시고르스 케말레나 동반이기 따와랑 시마주비 따와디 케말레나 소소기 봉지주를 강주만도 강투도 제와이나 냐와 동에디 인지미지디 셈데 지고 말레스 루아 소소기 디봉지주 미게 주봉 주름이 양다바 송 로아다 소소게 되니 베신베기 삼바삼보 양부 때 제와이나 저런 냐와 뚱고 말에 심제 제고 말했어 이내야다 디땡도 동반이게 따와디 켈링기요 동도 제 아니 따와디 디실 오빠 제와이나 뭐다 디기 소소라더니 시기 돈에 되니 가등해 봤어 아니 최라 되니 최스디 다가지 디스고 말 양답에 되는디라 치질로도 매와이나 아니 디실 오빠 제와로 왔더니 디원게 되니 저랑 아니 최봉길에 싸니 년소나 동그래 딜라고 그러면도 지 낭비 최 맞이 왔더니 년소나 동그래 디스시고 말이야 돈이 마도 방 년소나 동그래 디스고 말이스 돈이 따와 켈링베 때는 따와디 치지로지 제시 치지로지 겹 어디 디 자와나지 소소기 켈레바이나 켈링게 강사디 아니 디니 가스는 년소나 동그래스 난 다지기 타니라 후네 동그래스 거래서 어디 돈이 시고 그러면도 지 돈이 따와디 마코나 년소나 동그리 디스고 말했어. 디에와 채워했습니다. 돈이 마도는 년소나 동그리 디스고 말 돈이 마도나야 창주기 쌤 고문 인중의 삼바장 아니 배출은 남바다바 송와이는 년소나 동에 쌤데 요 말 동구 말했어. 이내 돈이 따와 켈링기 정도 채 아니 소소기 돈이랑 심마주비 돈이디 켈링기였어. 아니 나디 시기 정도 채 마신의 시기 정도 채디 고아디 제시 치질로디 아니 자와이나 아니 대시 lokpa 온기 양답이 되는데라 친절로 송화 인상 되기든 따왕님 밥 되기 저랑라더니 당가랑 수 켈링에 수다 수이나 오다 딜라 아니 레님 바 사기레서 오다 되게 지시고 그래서 뭐도디 최다 깨자 말을 디직바 양다게 돈에 시고 그래서 그러와 어디로 다 콜라
Yeah, so actually the answer given is different from the explanation that was given from the previous class a few months ago. But so what's happening here is that we're not saying that for someone who simply doesn't realize emptiness, they're going to fall into lower realm. So people who aren't Buddhist or never learned about the Buddha Dharma, this isn't referring to them. It's referring to the case where you have some belief in emptiness, but you just have a misunderstanding, or you have a misconception of emptiness, where you accept that emptiness, you accept and believe in emptiness, but your misunderstanding leads you to have this wrong view of emptiness, and then you give mistaken explanations of it to others. You believe you understand it, you think you understand it correctly, you sort of go around, go through your life thinking, oh, I know emptiness, I know the meaning of emptiness. But then you actually have a misconception. And so that misconception is, now you go and explain it to others and give this mistaken explanation of emptiness. And so that's an act of abandoning the Dharma, the genuine meaning of Dharma, the genuine emptiness. You're now abandoning the genuine emptiness. And so that's what's being talked about here, is what can lead to the lower realms. So the of course, like you said, like you said in the question, so if you don't have the correct view of emptiness, well, what is the correct view of emptiness? It's what is the method for eliminating the afflictions. So to eliminate the afflictions, you must realize emptiness. And so of course, if you have a wrong view of emptiness, then you won't be able to realize. Sorry, if you have no realization of emptiness, then you won't be able to eliminate the afflictions and achieve liberation. So that's true. But just by not realizing emptiness doesn't mean you're going to fall into lower realms. It's specifically this way of abandoning the Dharma by believing you understand emptiness, but really having a mistaken view of it. And so, right, so someone, if you practice abandoning the 10 non-virtues, you have that, good ethical conduct, then of course there's no danger, there's no worry of falling into the lower realms. And then, people, you can be practicing bodhicitta and renunciation and again, and keeping good ethical conduct, then you're not going to fall into the lower realms in general.
So is the issue, let's say somebody practices bodhicitta, but he lives in a cave and he's got the wrong understanding. So the issue, the crux here is when you teach someone else, when you teach other people the wrong view, is that what makes somebody going into a lower realm, even though he's a righteous Buddhist? The fact that he's teaching, he's spreading his wrong knowledge, is that what makes him go into a lower realm?
최상 아니 녀 년성 라흥와 디 미션다 라 넘버인 버지 돈이 다월 보고 you like 게타와 이내용 미션다 라파 저시 마감나 소저 다와 소저 공갑동 노르웨이 나양 미션발라 마시나 디 간자딜 아니 녀 년성 라흥에 gyusaga de gezi amena to shenla joshi loba gyamne nyola khongweres
어디 다 디실 로고 저 주고 말해 수수기 친 돈이기 된 친지 로직 양다바 많이 발라 양다바지 숙네 다가랑 이 삼니 셈라 틴데위 셴바 켈렌 수수기 셈나 셴바요나 디지정 수수를 랭에 봐서는 녀와 두고 benna든다 디로와 랑싱게 마두바스디 요바 많이 세지라 고나 다디 셰라 마시는 수수기 최점제 요바 말에 삼비 삼로디 다가랑 게 돈이랑 심마두비 돈이디 고아 딘디지라 잡니 다 최점제 요바 많이야 삼비 디 고아 말리나 다른 디 lok바디라 수수기 타지도 켈렌바이나 오다 켈링에 강사디 아니 개왕아지 메바 레준제 메바다 꾸주스 메바 강갈 꾸왔다 두고와 디 인상 아니 개와다 미지와 강갈 꾸왔다 덴바실라 소바 당한다 도를 수드나 요바 마인 세디기 랑싱기 요바 마인 세디기 고아디 라와디 셰라 말람나야 수수기 셈라 딘데지 다 이나미나선 도바선을 개마르와 이야 선미 수수기 다른 집에 양다바 마시와디 노교디 다가랑이 삼니 셴바 대와이나 오다 소소라 레니바 사야기 딜리기레스 로와 예손뚱에 주사기레스 디 셰라 인지미지라고 말레스 수수기 셰라 디실라고 자와 치부 마세 수수기 켈레바 있나요 아니 디 켈랭에 가사디 아니 당에 손 계획이 주사기레스 어디라당.
So it's really what we're able to establish. This explanation is able to be established through reasoning. It's because it's not just by explaining it to others, but just even holding the view in the mind of the person's mind by themselves. Because what they're doing is they're taking the genuine emptiness and they're saying that that's not emptiness. That's not the genuine emptiness. And instead, they're holding this completely, one-sided or fully convinced belief that, emptiness is true, and it means that phenomena don't exist. Phenomena are not existent. So for this person, just by that act, that mental act of believing that, what they're doing is then they're having it, and that itself is a deprecation of past and future lives. It's a deprecation of karma and its effects, because they're believing all phenomena don't exist. So they're believing cause and effect don't exist. Cause and effect, karma doesn't exist. Before noble truths don't exist. So it's a deprecation of all of those things. So this will then lead to them creating negative karma, non-virtue. They will then accumulate non-virtuous actions because of that deprecation of karma, of virtue and non-virtue. And so
but what about the other ones? What about the ones that believe that all phenomena has intrinsic existence, and karma does exist, and karma has intrinsic existence? Not the nihilists that believe that nothing exists, but the other ones. So you just give me an explanation.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let me just finish. So and then you said sorry, I just don't want to forget one last thing there. So part of the answer was also to say that it's not this kind of fault. It's not going to lead to this problem for someone who simply has doubts about the meaning of emptiness. So if they think, oh, does emptiness mean that all phenomena don't exist at all? Maybe not, and they're sort of still trying to complete an analysis, and they're still having questions about the meaning of emptiness. For that person, they're not going to have this problem. But for someone who has a fully convinced view, complete doubt-free view that emptiness means phenomena don't exist, and they accept that fully. Okay, so now I'll ask you the second part of the question. Then you get over to then chutamje yuba mayins came Kelemba di Parsha, Ani Chetamje Rangshingi Drup, Chebe Kelembe Gans like that. So young, Ani Konsogi Indian so Ganges, Konso young, Nola Huminga Yerebes.
Ole Ranshi Juba Kelling
She get Juba Kelemba. Oh,
the Ranshi Juba Kelemba Zamget the Nyalunga Sloma, Ranshin Maduba di Tony Tambare, Slavaina, Ranshin Madubi Tony the Pangwarwa, or Chumden de Ranshi Madubi Tony Sumbati. Tony Antaba Mare, Senator, Kua Tabaina, Takua Tapin Kansati, Ani Tony Gitona, Loba Shubarizan, Yawa Lumi to Sagres, Matoji Ranching, Matuba Kelly between Jigitoni, Kelly Batezamgi, Dini, son 20 Kendi Mares, Ranching Tuba Kelly, Ranching Matubi Tony, the Tony Antaba Mare, the Chumen de Gita Sumadi, Tony Antaba Mare, Senator, so Ribigitini, that bed Kalor Shimba. Shukchimbuton dineki da jik inda samni dineki kelembaina ani da ani di nyason tongwe jusago res otila da.
So just by believing and accepting that phenomena are truly established, are established by way of a nature, does not itself make one fall into the lower realms or lead to negative karma, which is a cause of the lower realms. It could become that if a person believes that the meaning of emptiness is that phenomena are established by way of their own nature. So if you believe that phenomena are being established by way of nature is the meaning of emptiness, now this is again a view where you're taking the genuine meaning of emptiness and you're believing that that's not emptiness. You're believing something which is not. You're believing something that's not emptiness is emptiness, and so that's also this act of abandoning the Dharma. So that then can lead to the lower realms.
So our, going by this, then wouldn't it be the case that people who are normally renowned to be great teachers and practitioners of the past, such as Lama Tsolenpa, who was a noted proponent of the Chittamatra view, they would all find themselves immediately reborn in a miserable realm after death due to holding a view of emptiness at odds with that of the Prasangika and thus abandoning the Dharma. Would this not be the case?
Then Lama Tsolenpa called Samsamba Yimbache. Any Kongi Tower, Tawaranji, any only the tower, lower tower, only the lower tower is in the council. Chinese and on the name Yola Kumaris, or whatever.
Tigas not
selling
the house. The Lama Slim Simsama, that is one. That's Lama Slim Baggy. Chetam Ranshi to Bakelima, Dana, Ranshima Duba Kelima, Kua Tabu Marwa, Ranshima Duba Tawa de la Tawa Yang Tawa Marise, Shung Kung Tuni, Anima, Tindegi Kapa Jabi, di Tawa Lopa Resin Sumeva. Tisuna, that's Goran Sungen, that Goran di Ling and Sagirwa, Tindisum Kung Yomares, Koran Ranshi to Bakelim be Simsam Tawa Chelling and Kansaji Remodoji, Ranshima Duba Tagi Tawa de Tawa Yang Tawa Mare, Tawa Chijilosini, Sung Yomares, Tinza Tinyanga di Yomares. Tinda de Sungedi Ransing Maduba Tawa Yang Taba Mare, Tawa Chinjilo Res, what the Tindigi, and Kua Tabaina, what a Ling Sagiri, Tisuma Res, Tila Eva Chisha Rani, Ranshim Madua Kemalina, Rangshi Majuba Tagen Kansadila Kuatam Tiki Lama Selimbi Tende Kuatam Kung Yomares, is a Tininga de Yomares, Tidatito or Chebakanga Chibares.
So someone like Lama Salingba, yes, he's a Chittamatra mind-only proponent, but it's only when what we're saying here is that someone who really deprecates the view of emptiness by thinking, holding again like a strong, definitive, completely convinced view that phenomena not being established within nature is a wrong view. They believe their view is that phenomena not being established within nature is a wrong view, and then they deprecate that view. And so that's here being described as the cause for going to the lower realms. But yeah, as a mind-only proponent, Chittamatra, then Lama Salingba does himself believe that phenomena are established within nature, but just believing that phenomena are established within nature doesn't mean you're deprecating the genuine emptiness.
Then is there some kind of translation error, because it says directly, if you claim that the emptiness, which is the absence of intrinsic existence, is not the sublime emptiness taught by the Buddha, and you refute it, then you will be reborn in a miserable realm due to having abandoned the true teaching. That seems like it's direct. It doesn't say anything about like deprecation or anything like this. It's just saying, well, yeah, that's.
Yeah, he's just using Genla said that's not what Lama Salingpa is doing, though. That's.
But he was teaching. Like he wasn't teaching like a different kind of like I don't know. Okay.
I mean, meaning there's a difference between teaching or accepting that phenomena are established within nature versus saying that, the teaching that emptiness of a nature is the meaning of emptiness is wrong. That's is a wrong view. That's not what
if you're refuting these other views like we do, and like systematically saying like this is why such and such view is not correct, and then establishing the correct view. I'm not sure the way in which he taught, but it would seem that they on a similar kind of a systematic approach that would be the case.
Sure. Okay. Then again, ini yang sama that's all konzo that konzo yang tak kapjugi gone jik tawa loba that's all part gagoroas chezang ani that chotamje bangsingi majuk tombani gidoin sir konzo tawa di gago marves so jik social tawa jubalas ani umata gyobe tawa di yang gagoroas.
되게 다 된다디 로베 된다 저런 최진데 로베 슬링바 주르와 라마 슬링바기 랑싱기 마주바 따위 따와데 따와 로바레 스니 손조 슝지에디 요마레스르와 다 랑싱기 주바레 랑시 주비 균전디네 데네 레슨티 송시르와 랑시 주바 균전디레스 다 디스팅네 랑시 마주바 따와데 따와데 따와 로바레스니 손조 콩디네 년 제만 용스르와 텐데 와 어디나시 심잠베장 고랑 랑신 주바 켈리베 때는 시고르만 두지 랑신 마주베 따와데 따와 로바레티 체달 홍알 스텐지 디시 자요 말레스 인두산에 따와 홍마기 켈리베 때는 따와 고마고마라 따니 되는 로바 장인지다 마장이 니레고 레스 슝디시 자요 들와 다 소수고 슝도 마디시 잡니 마도겐 지당 양 소수 슝시기시의 슝신달라 각바자가 이제 좀 니고 레스 인두산에 다 된다 슝수수 슝디 강한 시에디 마카도 시에는 좋아이나 디디고로 다슝 랑레 공미 슝도 약부되는 교회 매기라 되는 아니 베트시 로과 잡는데 양다고 말이 나와 있는 어떤 수술을 추봉을 싸와레스 어디게 에와 체투가 고레스 어디라다.
So what Ginla's saying is he's never seen any source that explains that Lama Tsarlingpa gave teachings like that or wrote texts like that. Lama Tsarlingpa, yes, it's possible he explained the Chittamatra view by saying and taught that phenomena are established within nature, but there's no source that claims that he ever refuted the view of emptiness of saying that phenomena not being established within nature is a wrong view. Now, when you just look at Chittamatras in general, then there's sort of two approaches, right? You can have some who just go directly and explain the Chittamatra view, but you could also have people who are refuting the other schools and the higher schools as they try to establish the Chittamatra view. So if you just establish the Chittamatra view, that's one thing. But if you are taking the higher views without really understanding the reasons and not having good reasons, and you just say, oh, they're wrong views, that's what we're saying here is deprecating the view of emptiness, and that can become that's what becomes the cause for the lower realms.
The Janet question.
Oh, okay, Janet online.
Thank you. So this is probably a much easier question. And with all this discussion of the wrong view, which I realize is important to help us understand the right view, I'm finding myself really kind of confused. When we talk about something like karma that we understand doesn't exist by its own nature. We understand that it's causes and conditions and all of that creates karma. But when we talk about once a karma has ripened, I've often heard it said, once a karma has ripened, it's gone, it's done. Is that an nihilistic view then, to think that the karma has ripened and is gone? And just from this conversation, does that make sense? Do you understand where I'm getting this question from? Okay.
Well, yeah, because the quotes that were given, yeah.
Yes.
So lechi sapa ina chedang le da rangshingi tubo maris. Inayang nazo lechi sagne ani mimba sapa lechi min sawache ani le diang meba chatwas min sane ani le di meba chaba songzang di ani cheta la huares orebe nari but the tanda meba chasame tawa nari but tanda meba tawa chasame
Ale ta le di
cheta ki jozo inser duas nari meba tanda meba zimbati chetang nari sabe le tanda mensawa tang le di zopares samotangna separes samotangna di cheta rebes
팀마레 진짜 딩군주 진짜 디나라 체다디 고물을 주기 송문준 단다 매제와 되나 제바 타와 줄수 체다기 된다게 디듯이 팀마레 와 병원에 비듯이 자와라 나를 유연에 된다 매라와 있는 체다 주고래서 디듯이 자와라 와 제름 이제 디디기 말했어 디듯이 로바를 했으면 송하라 와 근데 나를 유연에 된다 매라와 있나 디라와 있나 아니 베나 나닝 요조 잘라달로 메세 나닝 요조 미디 달로 메세 라와 있는 아주 강하다 체다를 홍에 계제든 주 강하 시마셔라고 영할링 와 팀 디체다스고 말레스 인다디 나리 랑싱기 두바 요바 켈림비 땡네 다다 메라와이나스 나랑 랑운 두바 켈림비 땡네 다다 메라와이나 디네 체다를 홍 교인디 송아레마도 지기 나리 유에 다다 메라와이나 디 체다를 홍 쓰게 말레스 디고 남주라는 거죠 단닝이 미디 달로 메세라 소바 단닝이 잘라 된다 메세라 소바 뒤서 강아 체다를 줘야 거 디 체다 말레스 와 딘다디 나를 유네 된다 메와디 체다레스는 고물을 송에디 나를 싱 주바 임비 땡네 단다름되니 요 말에 나와 있는 오다 체달 훈스 체달 훈난디 대시디 가진 대시 잡자서와 랑싱 주비고 켈린도 있고 딱바 켈레바 딱바 켈리네 한테나 메 나와 있나 아니 체바 타와 주당디 딱바 땡도 요바지 켈린비 되네 대다 메 나와 있나 언니 체다 주그래서 오다 디기 대시디 가스나 ngwe pa ka ba tang wi de shi ji wa di o ti re ma do ji nge ma yun da me se wa chi go ti che da se ma res
so that wouldn't be a view of annihilation. That's not what was being said by those quotes. So again, a quote from Nagarjuna was whatever yeah, so if you say that intrinsic quote is from today. If you say that what arose before is now non-existent, that entails annihilation. There it is. So that's that this is the way that the earlier generation of Tibetans with the wrong view are using this quote is they're misinterpreting the quote and then using that as defense for their view. but that's not the correct interpretation of the quote, right? So the interpretation of the quote, I mean, if that was the case, then anytime you say a person who was here last year doesn't exist anymore, or the object of last year isn't the object of today, doesn't exist today, all of those would become the view of annihilation, or an extreme of annihilation, but that's certainly not the case. So what's being said in those quotes is like what was explained last week. Within an understanding or a belief system that phenomena are established from their own side. So first, you have a view or belief that phenomena are established from their own side, and then you say, so a thing that was here before, an earlier object established from its own side, now it doesn't exist. That becomes a view of annihilation, because, as was explained last week, if you have the belief that something exists from its own side, then it must be permanent. So this was, again, the reasoning used by the Madhyamikas to overcome or negate the view of the those who accept inherent existence, who accept existence by way of nature. So what's called the realists, is that the phrase? Like something like that. The realists, essentialists, thank you, the essentialists. So the essentialist view is you're using this reasoning. So if you accept phenomena exist by way of their nature, they must always exist. That's what would be the consequence. They must always exist. So since now you're accepting them, things which always exist, and now you say, well, it existed yesterday before, but it doesn't exist anymore. Well, then you said something which should be permanent and always there, has gone out of existence. So now that's the view of annihilation. So that's what's meant in this these two quotes that were given. The quotes that were given today.
Thank you.
Kamala.
Maybe the sound's not working.
Yes, mic is off. Huh?
Yeah, but it could just be something with this.
Yeah.
We don't hear you.
Kamala 고민도.
Yeah, maybe there's something wrong with the mic. Oh, cover.
Kamala 뒤에 고민도.
Hello.
Yes,
Ale.
we hear you now.
라 Kamala 순다 된다 랩송.
Cover par고를. Cover on Jim. Okay.
Kamala.
Now he's not connected to audio.
Yeah.
Mic is gone.
I think he's trying to switch something. Okay.
Yeah, you. Wait. What do we say? You.
So someone.
Oh, okay.
Oh, John.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Thank you. So my question really is kind of focused on the quote from Nagarjuna's Precious Garland that's used. Then how could the excellent teaching, which has no basis, is not immediately apparent, and is most subtle and profound, easily come to mind? And it's referring to the kind of the impurity of the body, which seems to be attached to the idea of annihilation. So the body degrades, and eventually there's annihilation. So we observe this, but yet the purpose is to get to an understanding of liberation, how liberation is possible, right? So that the two extremes of annihilation and permanence don't allow one to get to that, that liberation, for there to be a sense of freedom, right? That it's not determined. So I guess my question really is the kind of urgent discussion here really meant to cover all bases. I mean, by bases meaning you have people with different capacities, right? So this is a discussion. The discussion of emptiness is really an understanding of emptiness, and meditation on emptiness is not for everybody, you know, according to this. So really, you know, it's really, you know, getting at having a complete system that, you know, has a ethical behavior for people of, you know, all capacities, right? So you know, people of great capacity you know, need to practice, and it says right here, you should be pure in upholding your ethical commitments, then strive in many ways to accumulate the recollections of merit and wisdom that clear away obscuration. So that would apply, I think, to all people, right? Whereas emptiness doesn't, meditation on emptiness, understanding emptiness doesn't seem to apply to all people. So I guess, you know, if I were to reduce it, what is meant by the excellent teaching which has no basis? What does having no basis really mean?
And can you tell me the page number, please?
Well, in my text, it's 138, but it's you know, it's the footnote is 289, and it's again, yeah. So
your question about the teaching having no basis, how is that? I'm not sure how that's related to different capacities of people.
Well, I think that you know,
you just want to know what the meaning of the quote?
The context of it having no basis in the text is also talking about the capacity to understand, right? Understand.
Oh, okay. So you're asking if that's related to the, okay.
Right. It seems to be. Is that related?
Okay. That gonna call lungi. Nama. 그래서 subject bare ene yang gamaching lungi downdos ravoreda rinchen chanwarishta umarishin chanwales and actually, to be frank, it's probably going to take a few minutes for me to find the quote in Tibetan so I can actually say it to Genla, and that
okay, I mean,
might take too much time. So maybe
come up another time.
Okay, I'm getting there. Hold on, might not take that long. Let's see. I just, because it could be a few different, you know, words in Tibetan, so I don't want to give the wrong one. Sumba de la uma belenji please. Lungdi the lamsang kaje ni tsusamani.
많이 저런데 농도도 잘 납다. 갈라도 그.
나 농도에서는 그 찍기 걸라 그래서 지기도 세상 나 담배 최디 아니 로라 차카와레스 이 시ang 시대 메바레스 아니 시대 메바당 로라 차카와인 베긴생기 담보다 시대 메베 되는 가리레스 아니 로라 차카와인 베긴생 시대 메베 베긴생기 아니 간사 상마 및 상마라 Geshe gap miru Kashila Geshe gap mirunwa chagiri base Geshe that samala Geshe gap runwa marwa Geshe gap rupa marwa Chesang ani sheet and mepa down lola chakawa ginsen diri base
Ale dati tongni di masam jume se di keji shiwa sar kwe
di uma renshin changwa drabo re
tangda di tinda dirwa tongba ni dira ke shoro tongba ni di ani be shindu tokawa tongna ta be tunda chimbo yewa madona koala mijowa gunsen ji shero dati shide mewa ste chedamje rangshi majuwa di tani shide mewa se de kasna chedamje ani ga rangshi gi jube rangun juba duizame majuwa 탄예도 자직이 남샤 태봐 딘데와디 아니 란이기 배 지다와 신도에 예가와 셰라야 지다와 신도 주가와 어떤 디랑신디 동가비 랑신디 타는 시고레스 디 시데메 와세디 베트메와디 마레스 와 탄예 답에 따뜻해서는 네바 니주메와 시디리베스니 배나가도 자조도지 깨지 시와이나 자조스디 자조기 닥실라 땅니 배나 강사라 해줘로 강사 미세지나 미기 류기 차식 강할라 땅니 미래라고 그러면도지 락바디에 미마르 고디에 미마르 강바데 미마르와 이네 디 강가 초비 내가 지게들 미라고 그러와 디 땅에 단연 답이 따뜻해서는 니주메게 마다 마제에서는 유게 오다 딘데기 땅에더니 최담지 오늘 당시된도 전에 니주메베랑 신리들라 아니 심해봐서 딘데지 돈이 아니 고고에서 레스 근데 저랑 유군이 세우지 고모서 있는 딘데지 돈 주시냐고 레스.
So even though I didn't find the exact quote in Tibetan, just explaining the best I could. So it seems like what this meaning here of having no basis is, so emptiness is the lack of phenomena existing by way of a nature. And that means that phenomena don't have even the slightest particle of a nature, yet they do exist conventionally. But so there's no existence of a nature, which means when you go and search for the object which is designated by terminology, then you don't find it. And so this is when you are analyzing, you don't find the phenomenon. Within a state of not analyzing, then phenomena exist. So when you look at an object like a person, a person is an object in this context. So an object like a person, then you go and look and try to identify what is the person, right? The object which is designated by the term person. It's the person's not their head, they're not their torso, they're not their hand. The person is labeled in dependence on a collection that is functioning in a particular way. So when all these parts come together and functions in a particular way, then you are labeling it a person. But there's not a single atom of existence of a nature in that person. And so this is something that's extremely difficult to understand, difficult to bring to mind. It's difficult to verbalize and explain. It's extremely difficult to explain. So that's what's being said about emptiness. It's not saying that things are not existent at all, or that there's nothing there at all.
Isla.
Lo.
Nghe có đã tính nghe máy thì liệu chỉ mình đủ. Nghe thiếu cái đi thằng bữa thì ngã du răng sinh mà du phê thì ngã du 대신 세월을 르버 thì tao nói 되게 유연하면 직체. 아니 như vậy thì 단다 ngã du lẽ thằng bữa mi phê bao giờ 아니 된담 là ngã du răng sinh mà du thì keleng chiori này 군조블 ngã du cái 직대가 가를 직 요에 손에 딱과 đi 통은 ngã du 3년 안에 직 코 된담로 매와디 3루 축 첨부 유화지다 콜로 코미야지 컨디스 최고 이메지 콜로 남주네
아니 아마 대신 쉐베 리퀘스트 나가래
대신 쉐고 말해 얘디 랑시기 마두바지요와 디가도 대신 쉐고라 땅나 되게 유연하면은
땅나 되게 레벨
리파디 땅나 되게 대신 쉐고디 랑시기 마두바지를 가지고 줌나 되게 유연하면은 디리파 땅나 마땅스 라라 디고스서 아니 디 니와디 나도 미페바지기 아니 군접 덴발라 군접 되면은 군접 덴발라 랑싱 요바지 나와디 나도 랑싱 매워지 나도 3년나 간데씩 공부 제고 유명해지지 아니 숨바디 단다디 네 단다디 인지체 유단다 나도 베베기디 롭데디나 테스 만다지도 디 고주디 네 테스 고스마 단지 니엘레나 고준 드레스지도아
근데
온디 아니
네 연결했던 디 카바티 쉐소
알레 단지 숨바디 단지 니 나도 니 시지도 알로데나 니엘레나 고준 드레스지도아 텔 케비 나도 쳇다다 딱다로 풍어라지나 니와딘데 나르메 아니 고준 드레스 디다야 단다 나도 이슈나라 나도 직된 거법을 하신다 지기 전두 땅에 갈라 코마 유니 넬레나 마 유니 고마 살투 고투를 땅 유를 페지 딩니를 디니에 데프식 고와자단디 쿠주 딘데 노니 팀에로 삼선하지도 녀와 고 녀베나라 고준 라과준 도겐디 데요레 디 컨디션
Nyawa nangwa gare?
녀와나라 야 녀와라 고준 도겐 고팔 준이 다 라괴 도로 또 도야디 다 고팔 준 도겐 디데 녀나 ngaju nang베날 디데 셰기 요나메나 가스나 인지나라 직된 거바부기 사신다 지기 진데 거바부를 된두 땅에 갈라 코마 녀라나 유에 갈라 코마 사윤디 안 고마 툴러친 사워레 페지어 이 famlo 디다 디야 디니니 군수 노니티 나군에 딘데라지 enough 녀디 컨디션
So I'll just briefly say because time. So the first question was about the reasoning that it's establishing emptiness, phenomena not being established with the nature. Should we use that same reasoning when we're actually looking at the Bhagavan Buddha or the Tathagata Buddha? First question. Second question is when we talk about emptiness and conventionally existent phenomena versus ultimate truth. Conventional truth is always, when we see conventional objects, it always appears to be intrinsically existent by way of nature. So how do we really get the strong habit of really thinking and believing that things don't exist within nature? The third question is about again a statement about falling into the hell realms because of this view of annihilation, then extreme of annihilation. Then is there, I didn't exactly understand, but something to do with the way you fall into the hell realm head first or something, and then is that some and then we talk about like in the Christian philosophy that if you sort of deny the existence of God, then you fall into the hell realm. And is it similar, or is there some kind of mistranslation here going on? There's a question about falling into the hell realm.
No, so that the Rashima to us the teaching Sheba Jana degree was the teaching Tamjela. Teaching Sheba Simje the Sanji Geja Human, Tajakanta she to be true in Tavijela, Rashing Matua Nyambares, teaching Sheba Rashima Tua, Simje and Rashima Tua, Chetamje Rashima Tua, Nyambati Casna, Louis Tope Partaza Mantuji, you don't in Nijumeva. Daxi den du zhen ni ju me ba yin ba de chung wa re sin za rang xin ma zhu ba se de sim ji ju ma re ti xin xie ba la jia ya re che tam jia la jia ru ba ti xin du ju ani pu mo ngo wa ti da rang xi ge dong ba na ba yang da ba ji su da wu su ni ma ge song yu de da che tam jia la de ni ba jia ni song wa ru ba song ni nam jing ge ba ge che tam jia la ru ba o ti ji che ani din da lo gun zu bei dong ne de ni ji yo wa zha wu ji da du da ma da ma ji bi zhen ne yu ba ji bi ji da xin ji bi zhen ne me ba zha wu ji wo de ti zi re du da 마다 마제베세나 땅을 주변에 지금 요와라고 지야 배 고랑게 원에 둘때가 지 라고는 두바지 난거데 이내 양 바닥된 전에 바로 똑배 파다자마도 지기 아니 라고는 두바 되자면 요 말에 세디다 원아주 검질래야 돼 동반 얘기다랑 신경마 주베 라고는 두바대로 검지 아니 가주 녀와 두바디기 아니 군주비 낭준조 강가티는 추나이 바디 삼로래야 돼 딜레고레스 군주비 추난데 산노데 추바이발라 랑싱게 마주비 돈니기 따와딜라더니 가주 녀와 곰지 때마 디즈기 때문에 추난데 아니 배 추난이 바디 오저체야 돼 레기레스 배낭을아서 탁바디 타가라 듀도 통연데 다디 주 많이 바디 하마고 봐도 탁바 타달라 된 미비 듀도 삼이 신나디 레로 도구 말아 티다 찍바레스 송여레 어 딘저지 통내도 쓰니 쉬어이나스.
So just to answer the first two questions there, when you talk about emptiness, this is to be applied to and thought about with regard to all phenomena. So certainly to the Tathagata as well, or the Shugata, the Tathagata, all epithets for the Buddha, right, as well. So why? Because all phenomena are merely designated and labeled by mind out there. And really labeled out there by mind. So all phenomena are not found when you search within the designated basis of, when you search for the designated object within the basis of designation, but you do not find an object. And so this is why all phenomena are empty. And this is stated in the Heart Sutra when the Buddhist, or when Avalokiteshvara said, also the five aggregates. So sorry, when it was said that Avalokiteshvara was observing how also the five aggregates are empty of nature. So that's what was said in the Heart Sutra. So when it says also observing the five aggregates, perfectly observing the five aggregates is empty of nature, that's referring to all phenomena. So then the second question is so when we think about, a conventional mind, so a conventional mind is one where it's not analyzing and not making a investigation or analysis. And so within that perspective of a conventional mind, then it's like everything exists. It seems like everything exists. Now, when you make an analysis and investigation into the phenomena, then it seems like phenomena don't exist. So we have to get used to that by meditating and familiarizing ourselves with the view of emptiness. And so as much as we analyze the view of emptiness, and that just that much is how we'll be able to see that this conventional mind is a mistaken mind. It's a mistaken mind. So we'll be able to understand that as we think about emptiness as much, the more we think about emptiness. And so this is like the example of when we have a striped rope or a modeled rope, as it said, a modeled rope is perceived to be a snake. Well, we're not going to be able to abandon that misperception and the fear that comes from it until we correctly identify that it's a rope. So we have to likewise correctly identify phenomena are empty in the way in which they're empty, and then we'll see that the conventional minds are mistaken consciousnesses.
Nyawa narme chizu nu zhuwa se de te daran yoba di song yores nyawa yin chizu zhu so di zo na di song yore nyawa narme je go sala tu nu dogen zhuwa ji yoba di song yores di yoba daran res
Go sala dogen se nagare
go sala tu kangba ya namla lang chiu sala tu ne go sala tu ne kangba ya namla lang ne o de nyawa gi narme gi jewa dinde yores
So yes, this is the teaching, the explanation of the Vici hell or the unrelenting hell is that the beings there, they stand on their heads and their feet are in the air. That's, I guess that was the question. Okay, so now we have to pause here. I mean, stop the question.
Beje Geshe Mendo Dharma Riraba Lingxi Nyende Genba De Sangye Shindu Mende Beba Doge Namda Shinla Jeba Sho Edama Guru Rana Mendala Kane Daya Mi Kanri Ravi Gobi Shingamansu Pendang Dewa Malu Chung Chere Sivan Tenzin Jazu Yin Shabi Sidi Ban Tenjuru Ji Gadien Duji Kamsu Chile Ju Topju Dabi Lungju Ji Lose Namla Rilam Dumin De Lamdun Jivi Shela Sova De Chanju Simju Rinpo Chi Ma Jeba Jeju Ji Jewa Nyamba Meba Kone Kondo Beva Sho Jewa Di Jewo Gun Sonama Ishe To Sonama Ishe Le Jung We Tamba Guni To Bara Jo. Thank you. Good night. Also good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.